Hi everyone, sorry, I haven't been recording, but whatever. Anyway, chapter 5, there's 20 pages of this chapter, so we're going to split this up into two sections, because that's entirely too many pages to be reading, so hopefully we'll find like a good stopping point. So, last we left off, they'd gone on a date, and he left her hanging, essentially. So here we go. I'm going to try to get through this chapter without giggling. You'll see why. Chapter 5. You think she'll show up? Becker asked for the third time. Gage looked up from his email to give the young surveillance expert a frown. I told you. She might not. Either way, PT starts in. He looked at his watch. 10 minutes. Don't you think you should get everyone out there and ready to start? Becker had been assigned the task of setting up and running this morning's PT session, but while the man nodded at Gage's obvious nudge, he didn't move. Yeah, probably, but I was just wondering if maybe she might join us. Why would you think that? She's not here to work out with us. She's here to write an article about us. Becker nodded again, still lounging against the door jamb. Yeah, that makes sense. Still, it'd be nice if she wore yoga pants. What the hell are yoga pants? How the fuck does this guy not know what yoga pants are? What women wear when they do yoga? You know, those tight pants that flare at the bottom a little? Becker grinned. I bet she'd look hot in them. Okay, that was more than Gage wanted to hear. He growled. Officer Becker, get outside. Now. Becker might have been fantasizing about Mackenzie's curvy ass in a pair of yoga pants, but he was still aware enough to know when he was close to mortal danger. He gave his boss a startled look, then took off running for the back door. Gage shook his head. Sometimes he wondered if the amount of time Becker spent playing with electricity had damaged him beyond repair. Then again, the guy had a point. Gage wasn't exactly sure what yoga pants even looked like, but he figured Mackenzie would look good in anything tight. Does he live under a fucking rock? He felt his cock immediately harden. Again. Shit, he hadn't slept worth a damn last night because of the hard-on Mackenzie had given him during dinner. It had taken an hour in a freezing cold shower this morning to finally get the damn thing to go down. He'd been lucky to even get to work on time, and now with a single semi-sexual thought about the dark-haired beauty, he was hard all over again. Thank God he was wearing a loose pair of shorts. Doesn't that show everything? It would have been a damn embarrassing doing PT with the team otherwise. He looked down at his watch. He still had a few minutes before he had to go outside. Maybe he could think about something else for a while and get his erection to relax. Why didn't he just take care of it, like normal dudes? Like, not right now, but I'm talking about, like, the night before, when he was, like, super hard and didn't know what to do with it. Take care of it. He tried to focus on what he needed to do that day, but that proved to be a stupid idea because he was going to be spending it with Mackenzie Stone. The purpose behind it might be serious, making sure she didn't figure out he and his men were werewolves, but all his cock cared about was that he'd get to hang out with that sexy body of hers. He practically heard a thud as his hard shaft pressed against the underside of the desk drawer. Has that ever happened to anybody? Or any guy, I should say. Damn, the woman was going to be the death of him. It had hit him like a sledgehammer when he'd gotten in his car with Mackenzie last night. She smelled really nice at the compound earlier in the day, and her scent had been even more delicious when she'd opened the door of her apartment. But all that paled in comparison to what it was like to be in a small, enclosed space with her. The perfume she'd worn combined perfectly with her natural scent to create a fragrance so alluring he'd almost driven off the road, he was so distracted. That's like Twilight. And that had just been the beginning. The entire dinner with her had been one long, slow tease. The way they'd been squeezed into that tight booth, the way her knee had brushed up against his leg most of the night, the way she'd leaned in close and nibbled her dinner in that slow, sensual way she had. The way she'd answered all his questions in that sexy voice of hers. He'd been so turned on he hadn't realized he'd started caressing her leg until the thundering of her heartbeat couldn't be ignored. She had the distant, glassy-eyed look of a woman in some serious pleasure. Is that what we look like, guys? Glassy-eyed when we're in pleasure? Then the smell of her arousal hit him, and he'd almost come unglued. Thank God Emil had shown up at the table just then, or he wasn't sure what he would have done. He never displayed more discipline in his life as he had when he walked away from her invitation to come inside. But he needed to get some space between them, get his head screwed back on right, and get his freaking lust under control. This was the safety of his pack, and he was losing it like a horny teenager. He'd done it, but it had been damn hard. Even now, sitting at his desk, willing his heart on to go down in a few minutes he had before PT, Gage still had no idea what the hell was going on with his out-of-control sex drive. There'd been a couple of times last night while he laid in bed staring up at the ceiling that he wondered if maybe Xander had been right. Was Mackenzie Stone some kind of cosmically assigned perfect woman for him, genetically designed to push him over the edge with nothing more than her scent? How convenient. In the frustrating darkness, it had seemed more than possible. Of course, an hour-long freezing shower, a lot of coffee, and the bright daylight of daybreak had made those thoughts seem ludicrous, until Becker had forced the image of Mackenzie wearing skin-tight yoga pants into his head. Now, as he pleaded with his erection to go away, he wasn't so sure. "Hey," Mike's voice sounded distant, even though he'd been standing in the doorway. "We're about to get started. Stone is here, too, and she has a guy with her. Gage growled low in his throat. Well, he'd finally found something that would make his cock relent. Anger. Simple, irrational, jealousy-induced anger. That's so fucking normal, guys. "So, why did you need me to come with you today?" Zach asked dryly as he snapped pictures in what could only be called a half-hearted manner. Mac was too distracted by the 16 sweaty, bare-chested men running around on the obstacle course. Well, they all looked scrumptious. Scrumptious. I don't think I've ever described a man with scrumptious. Food? Yes. Men? No. She found herself focusing mainly on Gage. God the man could make a Greek god feel inferior. She had no idea if all the crawling, jumping, and climbing made for good exercise, but it sure as hell was fun to watch. She especially liked the way his muscles bunched and flexed as they scrambled up the various towers and ropes. Damn, their rippling movement was downright sensual. I don't think I've ever described a man's muscles moving as rippling. I'm trying to think of The Rock. No. No, now I need to go watch some clips of The Rock to see if they're rippling. And if all those bulging muscles weren't enough to make her stare like a kid in a candy store. Stop it. Please stop it. The incredible matching ink that every one of the men had tattooed on the left side of his chest was sure as heck was. My friend Lisa said, that means they're in a cult. She'd never been one to look twice at a man's tattoo, but the one of the wolf with its long teeth, menacing eyes, and bristling ruff of fur that each of them had in the center of his left pec was just freaking cool. Emblazoned in arching letters over the top of each wolf was the acronym SWAT. That's so cheesy. The work was expensive looking and had obviously taken a lot of time. She had no idea what a wolf was to do with SWAT, which was 100% approved of the artwork. Anything to provide another reason to look at a sexy man's chest was okay with her. Zach cleared his throat, interrupting her musings. If she didn't love him like a brother, she'd smack him right now. "I need pictures of the SWAT team training," she told him. "So these pictures of sweaty, muscular men running around in nothing but a pair of shorts are going to be in your article?" "More likely on my personal laptop." She gave Zach an angelic smile. "It's possible." She's such a hornball. Her efforts probably would have counted for more if she'd been able to resist asking Zach to make sure to take lots of pictures of Gage flexing those beautiful muscles of his. "I should be getting paid overtime for this," Zach groused, but he dutifully snapped more photos. Look, if my guy best friend was doing an article on a bunch of female SWAT members and he had me over there taking pictures of them, I don't think I'd be so accommodating. I'd be like, no, pervert, that's not okay. Mac leaned back against one of the telephone poles that were part of the obstacle course. She and Zach had picked a good vantage point for this morning's PT session. Gage and his team had been going at it hard for almost an hour and didn't look like they were anywhere near wrapping up. Muscles and stamina. What more could a woman ask for? Brains? Now that we're in, what's the plan? Zach asked. "I really don't have one," Mac admitted, again staying away from any mention of a superdrug. "I'm just going to play it by ear and see where it takes me." "What do you want me to do?" Zach asked. "Other than take pictures, I mean." He flipped his camera into automatic mode so he could take a series of rapid-fire shots of Gage and his two squad leaders leaping from the top of a tower. It had to be at least 12 or 15 feet high, sure as hell too high for her to jump from. They hit the ground hard and rolled across the sand-filled pit under the base of the tower. Sand struck to their sweaty backs and shoulders, and it took all of her willpower not to run out there and volunteer to brush Gage off. This is not sexy. This is not sexy. I do not find this sexy. Who finds this sexy? See if you can make friends with Becker and Lowry, she said softly. The SWAT guys were now all the way down at the far end of the obstacle course, but she wasn't going to take any chances. They're the newest members of the team, so they might not be involved in whatever is going on. Okay, I'll try, Zach said, but they seem like a really tight group to me. Mac didn't need Zach to tell her that. After watching them work together on the obstacle course, it was obvious they trusted each other completely. It was unlikely any of them would rat out one of their own to an outsider, but she and Zach needed to try. By the time Gage and the other men finished PT, Mac was worn out, and all she'd done was watch. The SWAT guys, however, looked as if they'd just woken up from a refreshing nap. Well, I'm out of here, Zach said. I'll be back in about 30 minutes. She reluctantly tore her gaze away from Gage's sweaty body to give Zach a frown. Where are you going? I saw a donut shop a couple miles back. I thought after a workout like that, those guys might appreciate some quality junk food. Mac took in all the ripped muscles and flat abs, not to mention the tight buns. Oh, God. I feel like a pervert reading this. Not to mention the tight buns as the SWAT officers loped casually up the slight hill toward the admin/dorm building she toured with Gage. I hate to tell you this, but I'm pretty sure those guys don't eat donuts. Zach laughed. Right, you keep believing that. Just a word of advice. Don't get between these guys and the boxes when I throw them down on the table, or you might get run over. She shook her head as Zach headed toward the front gate. He was going to be embarrassed when he brought a half a dozen boxes of donuts, thinking it's going to get him good with the guys, only to have no one touch them. Max started for the admin building, wondering what she should do while Gage cleaned up, when he suddenly appeared at her side. She jumped. Crap, you scared me. Sorry about that, he grinned. I wanted to let you know it'll only take me about 20 minutes or so to get cleaned up. Feel free to roam around the compound if you want, or you can watch TV over in the training building. Mac was about to tell Gage to take his time and that she'd go watch the morning news when she got a whiff of his sweat-soaked body. The scent immediately transported her back to the lusty state she'd been in last night when he'd left her alone and unsatisfied at her front door. She never found men particularly sexy after a workout, but Gage was a completely different story. He smelled so scrumptious, she thought she might drool. I'm just trying to think of... No, scrumptious won't work. I prefer my men to be showered. I like the clean scent, I'm not gonna lie. Thanks, she managed to spit out. I'd probably walk around some, then head over and look at the news. Okay, I'll be quick, he said, then turned and jogged toward the admin building. Mac didn't realize she was following him until she was halfway to the admin building. She stopped short, swearing under her breath. What the hell was she going to do when she got there? Watch him shower and ask if he needed help getting all that sand off his back? She shook her head. She needed to get a grip on herself, and fast. She turned to head toward the training building, but stopped again. She wanted to get a look at the filing cabinets she'd seen yesterday. What better time to do it while this entire SWAT team was showering? She stepped into the building, all prepared to give Gage some story about needing to use a computer, but he was already upstairs with the other men. Of course, this would be a waste of time if the filing cabinets were locked. But they weren't. She wasn't sure if that was good or bad. Sure, she'd be able to rifle through them, but if there was anything incriminating in them, would they leave them open? Only one way to find out. The first drawer she looked in held personnel records. She skimmed through a few, including Gage's, but there was nothing in there she didn't already know. It wasn't as if they were going to maintain a list of drugs they might be taking. She closed the drawer and opened the next. Then why the fuck is she rifling through the cabinet? This one held more personnel records, but they were specifically related to training and weapons qualification information. Other than the fact that all the files were thick as heck, SWAT guys trained a lot. They was otherwise pretty dull. She moved to the next cabinet and opened the top drawer. It was full of what looked like incident records for each call the team had responded to, complete with officer statements, photographs, diagrams, and procedure review documents. Now this had potential. She picked a folder at random and started flipping through it when she heard the sounds of laughter coming from upstairs. That was when it hit her. There were 16 attractive, muscular, naked, and probably soap-covered men in the showers, not more than a few feet above her head. I keep hearing the Bow Chicka Bow Wow in my head right now, which is not helping. Oh God. It just sounds like a terrible, terrible porno movie. The thought was almost enough to make her say the hell with those old files and sneak upstairs for a peek. Holy shit. She's such a pervert. But she had a job to do and secrets to uncover. Mac checked the door, listening for footsteps coming down the stairs. She didn't have a lot of time to snoop around. She tried to focus on reading between the lines of the report. Now I'm trying to think. 16 naked men in the communal shower laughing and joking around. She tried to focus on reading between the lines of the reports, looking for any details that might have glossed over, or even left out completely, but it was hard not getting caught up in what she read. The first report chronicled a hostage situation involving a rape victim and her brutal attacker. The next was the father who had killed 2 of his own children before Gage and his men had gotten there just in time to save the mother and a newborn baby. Murderers barricaded in their homes, thugs who robbed convenience stores, everyday people who'd snapped and started shooting everyone they came across, depressed people who wanted a way out and thought pointing a gun at a bunch of people might get them what they wanted and what they were looking for. Mac was stunned by how many of the incidents ended with the suspects getting arrested instead of shot by SWAT. She'd always assumed SWAT only got involved if someone needed shooting. She jumped ahead to the date Marvin Cole had been arrested. It took her a few minutes to thumb through the files, but she finally found the incident report she was looking for. She read it through quickly, not sure what she was searching for. The report read, that's a terrible sentence. The report read pretty much like the story Marvin had told her, except for the part about the kidnapped victim being a 12-year-old kid and the kidnapper, Marvin, had beaten the hell out of the kid's babysitter to get the kid away from her. Gage's report said they tracked Marvin to an old hotel where Senior Corporal Zane Kendrick, one of the SWAT team's negotiators, had tried to talk Marvin into giving himself up. Marvin had apparently threatened the kid's life, which had sent Gage and another senior corporal on the team, Trey Duncan, into the hotel room. It was impossible to tell because Gage's word lacked any emotion, but Mac wondered if he'd been concerned about going up against a 350-pound criminal with only 2 officers. The report provided the precise time the two-man team had kicked in the door, and then only a simple 3-sentence description of the ensuing arrest of the suspect and rescue of the hostage. Senior Corporal Duncan kicked in the door and covered me as I moved across the room to secure the suspect. The suspect resisted, which required me to pin him against the wall of the room for a short period of time while Corporal Duncan got the hostage to safety. My pinning technique resulted in scratches to the suspect's chest, which were treated by the EMTs on scene. She was just flipping to the back of the report, which included pictures of Marvin and the familiar scratches on his chest, when she heard the thump of heavy boots on the stairs. Crap. Max shoved the folder back in the filing cabinet and closed the door as softly as she could. Then she darted out the door and into the main office. Could she make it to the front door before whomever it was entered the room? She decided against it and instead threw her butt into one of the office chairs and grabbed the first thing to read that she could find on the adjacent desk, a magazine about handguns. Or, she could have pulled out her goddamn phone and maybe scroll through Facebook. She just crossed her legs and opened the magazine to a page advertising real bleeding zombies, available for target practice now, when Gage walked into the room. I thought you'd be watching TV. She looked up slowly, acting as if she was mesmerized by the magazine. Oh yeah, I was going to, but then I saw this magazine and I got interested in it. I didn't realize I'd been sitting here that long until you came down. Really? Gage casually made his way toward the filing room. I never would have pegged you as someone to read a gun magazine. Mac almost gasped out loud as he walked in the room and looked around. Oh God, had she left the drawer open on one of the filing cabinets? Hey, she practically shouted. Did you know they make zombie targets that bleed? Gage looked around the filing room, then reached over and switched off the light. Yeah, I've seen them. Unfortunately, they're not suitable for real training. Really? She hadn't expected him to do more than laugh at how silly bleeding zombies were, not respond seriously to her question, but now he'd gone and made her curious. Why not? He came around and plunked himself down in the chair next beside her. For one thing, they're too damn expensive. For another, it encourages bad shooting habits. Everyone wants to shoot the zombie in the head instead of the center of the chest. She couldn't help but laugh as she envisioned the SWAT team being pelted with bad press because they were caught preparing for the coming zombie apocalypse. I guess that's your point. It could turn into a pure nightmare. Gay chuckled. Not nearly as bad as the trouble we got into when Xander brought in the fiberglass clown he found. He thought it'd be a great idea to use it as the bad guy in a live fire hostage training situation. The company that owns the burger franchise that uses the clown as a mascot didn't agree. Mac laughed. I wonder why. I know, right? She tossed the magazine on the desk, glad she'd been able to successfully distract Gage from looking too closely at the file room. She was sure she didn't leave any of the drawers open, but she needed to be more careful. She'd have a hard time finding anything on those guys if she ended up getting caught and tossed out of the compound. Not that she was going to learn anything worthwhile by reading those files. The only thing she'd gain by going in there was to verify that Gage had been the one who'd pinned Marvin up against the wall and put those scratches on him. He'd come right out and confessed it in his report, then had the EMTs take pictures of the scratches for the police records. Not exactly the act of a cop whacked out on drugs, and Marvin's assertion that the only someone on drugs could pick him up and pin him against the wall, that seemed a little more dubious now that she'd met Gage and seen all those rippling muscles. She got the feeling Gage might weightlift criminals like Marvin for fun. She almost screamed in frustration. Right now she felt more than a little stupid. She'd practically begged Ted to let her go after these guys, and other than the mysterious issue of the dusty NVG cases, and at least one team member who'd been too stupid to get his injuries checked out by the hospital, she'd nothing. Even the injury ankle was looking like a bust. She'd done some serious eyeballing of every member of Gage's team during PT. Considering that none of them had been wearing much more than socks, sneakers, and shorts, there'd been a lot to eyeball. She couldn't find a wound on any of them, Martinez's included. Apparently, Gage had been right about the scratch thing. For the first time that she could remember, Mac doubted her instincts. She sworn there was something going on here, but now she wasn't so sure. She was still musing about how she could have been so wrong when she realized with a start that Gage wasn't talking anymore. She looked up to see him regarding her with mild amusement. How long had she zoned out? Oh crap, she was completely losing it on this case. So what's on the agenda for today? She asked. Mike and Xander have some squad-level training they'll be doing. We can go watch that. He gestured to the magazine on the table beside her. Or since you seem to have taken a sudden interest in handguns, I can take you out for that shooting lesson we talked about yesterday. Mac's heart beat faster. She knew that she shouldn't do it. Her best chance to learn something, if there was anything to learn, was to stay with the largest number of team members. You never knew who'd slip up and say something, so that more people you were around, the higher the probability. But that was logic talking, and right then, for some reason, logic wasn't making decisions for her. Her rapidly increasing heart rate was. Besides, she'd just been thinking the story was looking more and more like a bust anyway. Just the two of us, you mean? He gave her a sinful smile, as if he knew that was exactly what she was hoping he meant. Well, yeah, unless you preferred to have a few other people to come along with us. She didn't. Okay, so ends part 1 of chapter 5. I will try to get part 2 out tomorrow, but I am traveling, so maybe not tomorrow, maybe the day after, but I will certainly try. So, have fun, and I will see you later.